send a copy to me, and I always print it out and give it to you because I know that some people don't check email. Unfortunately, that's kind of a problem right now. We realize that you guys mostly communicate by text, and we don't have that capability or the manpower to sit there and text to you. We just don't have that technology at MPC, so we're communicating with you by email, okay? But we realize that that's kind of a problem. So I do print them out, give them to you in class. What the reading strategies is saying to people at this point is, some people are at a point where in order to stay in the class, you need me to sign something, okay? I printed out about 15 of those the other day, and I haven't signed anything. So people need to start bringing that stuff to me to sign. Okay, yes?
Our instructor will notify us and tell us that we need to get your signature.
Yes, yeah, they notified you, and I think I gave out all the little things. And then they notified you by email, okay? And let me try to show this without getting the person's name on it. And then they sent this note around, whoops. Try not to get the person's name who's not here. Our records now show that you have now missed 4 labs. I'm writing to remind you that if you miss one more, you have to get permission from your English class instructor to remain in the lab. So this is the email that went out, like I say, about a number of people. Well, I guess it was 15. I guess I misspoke. It was 15 across all my classes, the 301 and these 2 classes. So it wasn't 15 in here. But yeah, if you got one of these, if you didn't get one of these emails, you're fine for now. But if you got one of these emails, I both got a copy and printed this out to give to you. Okay. So if you haven't heard from them, you're probably fine. Yeah. But again, do come up and check this. Don't just assume. You know, a couple of people wrote on the midterm evaluation when I said, do you check this regularly? And they said, no, I don't check it because I know I'm doing okay. Well, the question is, do they know you're doing okay? So if there's a mistake, which sometimes there is, then you need to check it. And if you are one of those that's saying you haven't been there and you know you have, then go down there and get straightened out with them. Okay? So yeah, definitely come up and check this through the, at the break. One of the reasons I was late is I got this like as I was walking out the door, and I didn't take the time I usually turn it around and print it so it's bigger. It's really tiny, but I think you guys can still see it. Okay, so what we need to do today is keep working on this idea of looking for the topic and the main idea. And what we're starting to see in the reading and writing exercises, and remember that these reading and writing exercises that we have every week are designed to test you on the stuff that we're learning through the homework, okay? So they're not separate. And what I'm seeing is most people are on track. Most people have the idea. But there's still some disconnect, which is a word that is one of those words that's been turned from a verb into a noun. You normally would like disconnect the computer, but I hear it used now as a noun. There is a disconnect between, people have which is kind of a good word. There's a disconnect between the annotation and the summary. So in a lot of these papers, I wrote, doing better work on the annotation is really going to help you with your summary. All of this stuff that I'm having you do here, let's see, I don't have a good example here of one which most people did. Okay. Yeah. Okay. This is one that's kind of good. This had parts to it, which some people didn't recognize, and some people I was glad to see did, and that really helped you, this baseball thing. Okay, there wasn't a real reversal transition at the beginning. Some people did realize that there was one down here which was important. It didn't necessarily turn the whole paragraph around, but it indicated the beginning of a part. So basically what you had here was an introduction which told about their similarities. So up to here, it told who they were, it told when they played baseball, and it said that they both suffered prejudice, okay? Then it had a little section, kind of like the Claudette Colvin and Rosa Parks, although very much smaller. It had a little part about Jackie Robinson. And then here's a transition that we haven't really worked with so much yet. This is what's called a comparison transition, not a contrast or a reversal, but this is saying the same way. Okay, so it's saying these are the same. So it talked about Jackie Robinson, and then it talked about a little bit longer about Hank Greenberg. Okay, so you had the introduction, the discussion of what Jackie Robinson suffered, the discussion of what Hank Greenberg suffered, and then what was this part? What is the part that starts with the reversal transition? Anybody? A lot of people did a really good job of making those, showing that you saw those parts. Anybody? What is this part? What does that tell?
I put down what they did after baseball.
Good, exactly. This part says what happened after baseball, okay? A lot of people totally ignored this, both in the annotation and the summary. So this is one of the things, you have to, when you're writing a summary, you have to account for everything. You can't just leave it off. In fact, one guy in the next class, I'm not sure why he did this, he did an interesting thing. I'll show you his. And he was one of the ones, but it was kind of odd. He said, where is he? Nick. Okay. He said, Jackie Robinson and Hank Greenberg faced a lot of prejudice attacks. Regardless of the constant abuse, both managed to build a friendship. And then he put this in quotes. Even after their careers, both helped to end segregation. And he said, maybe ace the last part. He's saying maybe I shouldn't have put this in. I'm like, yes, you need that. It was so weird. It was perfect. I mean, his is just perfect. And he's saying, well, maybe I don't need this sentence. I'm like, no, that's the whole thing. So, but it was interesting that a lot of people seemed to think that was not necessary. So, yeah, so I told him better recognition of the parts will help you decide what to include in your summary. Yes, you need to account for all of them, okay? So, yeah, it was kind of weird that people had this idea that they didn't need that in there, okay? So yeah, it told the similarities and then it told what happened after baseball. And so that's what I'm kind of looking at here, is making sure that you understand that these are not three separate chores. Doing this, then doing this, especially this part, and then doing this. If you have done this, and understood what the topic is and what it's trying to tell you about the topic, your summary is going to write itself. You're going to say, oh, okay, I understand exactly what's going on here. And then it's going to come together. So this was what we were looking for. Jackie Robinson and Hank Greenberg faced a lot of prejudice. Really, they doesn't need that. I don't know where he got this word from, prejudice during their time in early Major League Baseball. Now, here's another thing that I marked on some people's papers, and I didn't take off for it because it was, you were correct. But this, where he says they faced a lot of prejudice, I guess he could have put and a tax, that would work, okay, plus a tax. This, when you say they faced a lot of prejudice and a tax, that's a summary of all this stuff that happened. So you didn't need to go into the discussion of, you know, the teammates said they would rather sit out a game. With Greenberg, they didn't want to give him a chance to beat Babe Ruth's record. You didn't have to go into that because that's included in that idea that they suffered a tax. That's the details of the attack. So that's what we're kind of looking at over the next several weeks here. We're going to be looking at that level of details. Once you say they both suffered attacks, you summarize that, okay? And then regardless of the constant abuse, both managed to build a friendship, and then this was perfect. Even after their careers, both helped to end the segregation in baseball. And again, that takes in all of this business about the Cleveland Indians, the special person, that was included in the Friends. So it doesn't have to be real long, but it does have to have everything in there. Okay, so we're going to keep working to get to this. This was good, despite the fact that he didn't think it was what he was supposed to do. Anyone have any other questions about the summary of it? Okay, the vocabulary. A couple of vocabulary words in here that are really important. So we need to talk about some of them. Important for several reasons. What does luminary mean? Do you know any other word in any language that has that root in it? Luminary in Spanish or English? What is this? This is actually, I think this is actually not an original Spanish word.
Does that mean like a kind of music or?
Music? No.
Or like something you play with the horn or?
Mm-mm. Nope. What's this? What's a luminaria? Have you ever heard of those things? It's, you take a lunch bag, a little brown, you've probably seen them, you don't know what they are. You take a little brown lunch bag and you fold it over at the top and you put some sand in the bottom and you put a candle in. Have you ever seen those? Those little bags? Those are called luminarias. And that's a word that isn't really, it's kind of from the Spanish, but it's not, it kind of was a made-up word between Spanish and English. What is, here's another one. Ever heard that word? I hope I have that spelled right, I'm not sure. This might be odd. Luminescence, yeah, that's right. I'm pretty good at spelling if I can see if I see it, then I see it's not right. Luminescence is the amount of light that these give out. You probably hear this word as they're talking about the switch over to these new light bulbs. They have as much luminescence as the old-fashioned light bulbs, but they don't give off as much heat. They give off as much luminescence. So this root basically means light. And a luminary, if we say he was baseball's first Jewish luminary, there's a restatement clue here, but it comes before, not after. If I say that the restatement clue comes before this word, what's a word that has to do with light? Baseball star, yeah. It means star. Luminary means star. That gives off light, okay? So, yeah, who became baseball's first Jewish star. So, baseball star is Jackie Robinson, and this sentence is interesting because this is a long sentence to start with, and it had a lot of commas in it. Baseball stars, and you kind of said, wait a minute, Jackie Robinson's only one star. Why are they put an S here? Yet, did people have to read that a couple of times before? Yeah, it's a long sentence. Baseball stars Jackie Robinson, who was the first African American, and Hank Greenberg, who became baseball's first Jewish star. Yeah, you kind of had to get in there and sort out all those comments. Had a lot in common. That's basically what it says. Okay, yeah, so luminary means star. I think this was one of only about 2 people who got this right. But if you some people put person or player. That was a good guess. Baseball's first Jewish player. That's a good guess. But it means star, okay? The one that most people had trouble with, and again, this is I do want you to know what this word means, but I also am a little concerned about, I don't know how else to say it, but about laziness of students, okay? Here's what happens. You have a restatement clue in the form of an asterisk, okay? There was a restatement, so I think people at this point in the, how do you pronounce this, by the way?
Anti-Semitic.
Anti-Semitic, yeah, that's pronounced anti-Semitic. At this point in the semester, you're kind of saying, oh yeah, all right, this is easy because it has a star here, right? It has an anti-Semitic. But what people did was, and this always happens, again, I think it's just laziness. They just copied that first line, okay? And that isn't enough of a definition, okay? People suspecting, hating, or discriminating against. So what I wrote down here was this. It doesn't make any sense unless you put that in. What is this specific, why was this separated out from just racism? What does this mean? Being against whom? You have to go down to the next line. Okay. Yes, you do have to read through this, double check it to make sure that it makes sense in the sentence. Anti-Semitism is suspecting, hating, or discriminating against Jews specifically, okay? So that, again, that's a reading thing. Be sure that when you get a clue like that, that you're using the whole thing, okay? So racism, especially in this context, in these years, 1933, 1947, you say racism, you probably mean black and white. You probably mean African American. But this is also this is more specific. Anti-Semitism is specifically against Jews. You notice this is capitalized. It's kind of an interesting word. The Semites, which we don't call them that anymore, we call them Jews. There isn't a race called this really anymore, but it actually came from, weirdly enough, Noah's 2 sons. Anybody know what Noah's 2 sons' names were? Do they have that in this movie? Has anyone seen that movie, Noah? His 2 sons were named.
The recent movie, the one that's just out.
Yeah. Noah's 2 sons were Ham and Shem. And somehow the idea is, and I'm no biblical scholar, believe me, is that the Semites were descended from this son of Noah. The Jews were descended from him. So this name came from, that's where it comes from. I mean, yeah, it's a strange origin of the word, but that's what it means. people against Jews, okay? So that's one of them that people had trouble with. And then the other one that I was very disappointed that people had trouble with was this one. And the reason I was disappointed, I wasn't so disappointed that you didn't understand it, because this is a totally new word to many people, and it's an odd word. Why was I so disappointed that most people didn't get this one? You should have prior knowledge of that word. Where have we run across the word segregation? Michelle, where did we have that word? Segregation we had in the Rosa Parks, okay? Segregation means what? If a bus is segregated, what does that mean? If we say the buses before Claudette Colvin and Rosa Parks did that, the buses were segregated, what does that mean?
Separate?
Separate. There was separate seating. The black sat in one place and the white sat in another place. So if you desegregate something, what do? This is one of those prefixes that mean the dis, anti. If you desegregate something, you unsegregate it. This means not segregated. Okay, so that's what I'm hoping you guys see at this point. Oh yeah, recognize segregation, but desegregation, and then again, check it with the meaning. So Robinson not only contributed to the desegregation, meaning taking away the idea that only whites played in Major League Baseball. In other words, he was contributed to multiracial teams. And by the way, he wasn't the first black to play baseball. There were, but the thing was, when you read about this, if you're interested in this, there was a whole different league for black people. They just couldn't play on the white leagues. They had their own league. They had their own teams, but they just couldn't play on Major League Baseball. Okay? So those were the words I was concerned about. Put those on your blue sheets so that you remember them later on. Desegregation, and anti-Semitic. Being against whom? Okay, are there any other questions on the vocabulary? Okay, let's see. Oh, a couple of problems here, and I wrote out some notes to people. This is one of them. This was right. The topic was Major League Baseball and Jackie Robinson and Hank Greenberg, or just these two, okay? And then, but then again, there was a disconnect here where you didn't see the connection. Remember that what you have to be doing here, and we're going to continue to work on this today, if the topic is Major League Baseball and Jackie Robinson and Hank Greenberg, your question here is, what is this paragraph telling me about these three things? Okay, and that's what I wrote over here. If this is what you put for your topic, which was correct, then your question is, what is the paragraph telling me about these two people? Is this the answer to that question? You see what I'm saying? Yeah, one of the things I'm trying to point out here is the answers are all here. You have all of this information here. but people are not going back and double checking what we've learned. That's what I'm concerned about. So if this is the case, what is the paragraph telling me about these two people? The best answer is the one that has their two names in it, right? That's what, okay, so use your logic, use your skills to get in here, even if you didn't know that trick, to say, what is this telling me? This, just the fact that these two names are here would have made this a better guess than the other two answers. Does that make sense? So use your brains, to go through this. Then, very often, as we'll see today, what you guys can do is, in building your summary, very often when you're writing out your own main idea, your answer to this can be the first sentence of your summary. That's a pretty good place to start, right? If that's the main idea, start your summary with it. Your summary is, and if that doesn't work, if you're thinking, if you write something here, and now that we're writing it out by ourselves, and then you say, no, that's not a real good way to start the summary, then something is wrong. Maybe this isn't your main idea. Maybe you need to go back to that. So that's what we're going to be working on the next several weeks, is moving from, our annotation and using this to come to this, which this person very correctly did. If these two people are the heading of your lists here, then it's a pretty good guess that that's the topic. That's good, okay? Then you need to go from there to here. Okay, so that's what we're going to be emphasizing over the next couple of weeks. Okay, anybody else have any questions about that one? Like I said, most people did really well. And I think I probably gave out fewer pink sheets than I usually do, but there were still some issues. Okay, so let me see if there's anything else. Let me get these people's papers back into the right. This is what I always do, is I take apart their papers and then I never get them back in the right place. Okay, so let's look at our homework, where we're doing the same thing. Let me just check my little list to see if there was anything else I needed to tell you. Oh, yes, before we do this, there is something else I wanted to mention to you. As I got on here, and I got a little bit bogged down by having those. I know Kimberly was trying to get those to you right before class, but it kind of threw me off to have to deal with the coffee machine. So I didn't get your... Okay, so I'm going to the class website. I'm going to make it a little bigger so we can all see it. Can you guys see it in the back? I was in a class the other day where I was evaluating the teacher, and she put this up here. And I told her, I said, you have to make it bigger. You can't see it from the back of the room. Okay, so when I go down to this week, what I was going to point out, I'll put the journal topic up here. I try to usually do that before class, but I got hung up with the reading center reports. So I'll put this journal topic up here for this week, and then what I wanted to call people's attention to is, look only how few weeks we have left. That's what I noticed as I was going in there to put the stuff up there this week. We only have that many more weeks left in class. This is that point in the semester where everybody's kind of thinking, oh, we're never going to get through this. And then suddenly it's going to be, that's the deal with the reading center. You think, oh yeah, I have time to get down there and make up those hours. And then all of a sudden, there's not going to be any time. So I just like to call people's attention to that. And because of that, I also want to call attention to the fact that to the idea of finals week. This is something that for some reason people don't grasp, and this is a college survival skill. This is what's called the last week of instruction. And this is true of any college, not just MPC. The semester is 16 weeks long, but there's also something called finals week, okay? And you are required to be on campus. I can't tell you how many students come up to me every semester and say, well, I have to be out of town on finals week, so what can I do? And I say, why? Why did you plan a trip out of town when you knew that you had to be here for that finals week? Okay, it's strange, so I just like to call people's attention to it. What happens with us on that week is this, and again, we'll go over this when we get closer to the time, but I just like to start talking about it because it is important. Okay, I give the last exercise, which is similar to the midterm, on the last day of instruction, okay? But you are also required to be here on this date. And notice that the time is different. That's another thing we need to talk about as we get closer. The reason it's different is because all of the classes on campus have to have the room for 2 hours. The reason I can do this ahead of time is because we have a 2-hour class. If we were a 1-hour class, if we just met from 9 to 10, I wouldn't be able to do this because we need the room for 2 hours. But on this week, even these classes that meet in here Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 to 9 or whatever, I think there is one that meets in here Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 to 9, or maybe that's Tuesday, Thursday. They need to have the room for 2 hours on this week to give the final exam. So they readjust all of the classes. We only meet once for 2 hours, okay? So we'll talk about that a little bit when we get closer to it. But just be aware that you might want to start looking this up. See the final exam schedule, and I will put that on the class website this week. It's also on the web. It's also, I think it's printed in the schedule. I'm not sure if it is anymore. They narrowed that schedule down. See the final exam schedule to confirm the final times and days for your other classes. They may be different from regular class weeks. Okay? So just another kind of a heads up about one of these college survival skills. Finals week is a little bit different, but you are required to be here. We are actually required to give the final this day. I kind of fudge with that. But that's why I have to call it the final reading and writing exercise. It's really the final exam. But if I put final exam here, I get in trouble because I'm not supposed to give the final exam any other day but this. I feel in this class, it's important enough for me to meet you one more time. I will have the grade sheet. I just want to make sure people understand what their grading the class is. So I meet you, go over the course grades, and go over the final. Okay? So just be aware that it's a good idea to start, double checking your other final days and times. Okay, now we can look at the homework. Okay, so we looked at this Faraday one. And let me get my highlighter out. And again, on this one, remember that you do need to be doing the highlighting and annotating as far as showing me that you are looking for these things that we have covered. Okay, let me write these up here. What happened to the eraser? So we know we're looking for repeated words. And we are looking for lists. And we're looking looking possibly for parts. And under the list, we're looking for an introduction to a list, and remember, we have the reversal transitions, and we also have those things called addition transitions, which are the things like also, then, or the years. We did, a lot of people, it was really good on that, on this one, let's see. Yeah, that person didn't do it. Some people did start to pick out the years, that was good. I think, oh, maybe this is a list of years. It was kind of interesting because they kind of went all over the place. So 1947, 1933, 1938. So, well, maybe this isn't a list of years, you know. So, but it was good that people made an effort. Some people made an effort to try to put this into a list of years. It didn't really work, but sometimes it is a list of years. Okay, so on this one, what do you see when you are reading through this the first time? What do you see repeated or referred to most often? Sandra?
Crimes.
Crime. Okay. Crime is one thing. Okay. So is it just crime? So go ahead and write this down. Yeah, that's the thing. Go ahead and write it down. Yeah, there's another thing that's repeated or referred to. It is crime.
TV.
All right, yeah, and then TV. And it's not just TV, but TV viewing, right? Okay, yeah, that's what seems to be referred. So here's the word view. TV viewers, people who don't watch much television, that's a reference to viewing. Okay, criminal activity, viewers, okay, heavy viewers, light viewers, okay, and there's all these references to crime, okay, and this is obviously references to crime here. Okay, so do we see a reversal transition? No, doesn't look like there's a reversal transition here. Do you see parts of this paragraph? You see what's going on in the parts? What are the two parts here?
A heavy.
Yeah, there are two things going on here. This is kind of an interesting one. We have heavy and people who don't watch much. Heavy, light viewers, heavy viewers, light viewers. Okay, so this is an interesting parts thing. And it's something that you have to get used to as far, in fact, my English 301 class right now is writing a compare-contrast paragraph, essay. Has anyone ever had to write a compare-contrast essay before in English class? Do you recognize that assignment? Yeah, take two things and, you know, say, yeah, these look alike, but actually they're very different, okay? And there are two ways to organize that kind of essay. You take two trucks. You say, here's a Chevy truck and a Ford truck. They both cost about the same, but they're actually very different. And then you go on to list. One has better additions to it or something. The one gets better gas mileage. You can either organize it by saying, you can say Chevy and talk about the Chevy, and then say Ford and talk about the Ford, okay? Which is kind of what we have seen. That was the Rosa Parks Claudette Colvin, or even the Hank Greenberg, Jackie Robinson. It talked about Jackie Robinson, then it talked about Hank Greenberg. It talked about Rosa Parks, then it talked about Claudette Colvin. But both of those were comparing the two things. Does this one follow that pattern? How does this say, does this go heavy viewers and then light? No, it's going back and forth. So this is the other way to organize it. First, what they're talking about here, this, we're gonna see if this is the topic sentence here, okay? Heavy viewers believe it's on the upswing. People who don't watch much TV tend to be more realistic, okay? Then this part says people who watch a lot want heavier prison sentences. People who don't watch so much want prison reform, okay? So it's in groups of how much crime and what punishment should be given for the crime. That's what the groups are. So what it's doing here is it's taking these things, if you were doing here the mileage, the, what do they call them? The extras, if you buy a car and you buy all the extras, is that what they're called? There's another word for that. If you were going to discuss those three things, then you'd have to do this, right? Chevy truck gets this mileage, has these extras, costs this much in maintenance. Ford truck gets this mileage, has these extras, costs this much in maintenance. Then your conclusion somewhere is, so you can see that the Ford truck is a better buy, or whatever, okay? So what this one is doing is it's organizing it like this. Mileage, and then it's going Chevy and Ford, and then the extras. See what I'm saying? Instead of going like this. So there are parts to it, but it's a different organization from the other compare contrast things we looked at. Okay. What is this telling us about crime and TV viewing? This is where it gets, this is where you really have to work your brain here. Because now we don't have enough, we don't have Lorraine Fleming's suggestions. We have to come up with a complete sentence on our own. So again, what we want to think in terms of, go back to our complete sentences. Subject, verb, and then complete idea. Sometimes we can get the whole thing by just answering those two questions. So this is our tough question. What's the subject? Who or what is doing the action in this? Sandra?
The light and heavy viewers.
Okay. Light and heavy TV viewers are doing what? What's the action?
Watching.
Have?
Yeah.
And what do they have?
They have crimes and penalties, or punishment, crime and punishment?
That's, but good guess, you're taking it from here. What do they have?
They believe,
Good.
yeah, they believe that, like, about the prison,
Okay, yeah, okay, so this is, okay, so they have would work, believe would work. Anybody else, you see where we're going with this? And here's where your summary comes in. You've got two things here, okay? The list is, okay, heavy viewers see, whoops, an upswing. What is an upswing? They see an upswing in crime. Okay, it comes from not so much swinging, but it kind of comes from the picture of a graph. If you have a graph and you have the number of crimes and the years, you know what I'm saying? That's the